Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our early SIG 15 Broadback seminars. And today I'm glad to introduce Professor Ricardo Rosas Díaz of the Center for the Development of Inclusion Technologies of the Pontifical Catholic University of Chile, CEDETI. Professor Díaz and his team have created many open access and accessible technologies for supporting the initial literacy of children with special educational needs. And one of the most important technologies is Sueña Letras, a software designed to support the initial literacy of deaf children. And moreover, the software obtained a prestigious award in 2011 and has been adapted to many languages. Also, Professor Díaz has been instrumental in the development of Spanish language versions of educational video games and tablet-based tests to support and measure the phonological awareness of children. And we are very lucky to have him here talking about students with deafness and blindness. So thank you very much, Ricardo, and the floor is yours. Yeah, Ricardo, you can unmute yourself. You can open the microphone.
Okay, can you hear me right now?
Yeah, perfect. Yes.
Hi, you all. Thank you very much for introducing me, Nadina. I'm really very glad to be here. Actually, sorry for the confusion, but my name is Ricardo Rosas. We have the Spain tradition that we use both mother and father and mother name, and so my name is Rosas Díaz. My father name is Rosas, and my mother name is Díaz. So my real name is Ricardo Rosas. Yeah, not Ricardo Díaz. Okay, but making this small clarification, let's go to what is our research now. I will share my screen. Okay, we studied during about 3 years the developmental trajectories of deaf and blind children, students in regular and special schools. I will show you the results of this study. It's along 1 year and 3 tests, and we were following the question on how is special versus regular educational system doing with children with disabilities. Oh, I don't know. I don't know what is.
Doesn't it change?
Sorry, Nadine. No, it doesn't change. How can I do it?
Okay, maybe we can try to stop sharing and then share again.
Wait. Yes, please. Let's try that.
So you might have like a square at the. Yeah, now you've changed the slide. Can you see it?
Okay. So I'm okay. Thank you, Nadina. I'm doing that directly from my PowerPoint and not from the shared screen. Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay. Our main question is how both systems are doing it with special educational needs students, because since many years ago, since the Warnock statement, it is a must for all worldwide educational systems to try to develop inclusive education. And this, in the case of Chile, as in many other countries, had as a result to a decreasing of the special educational system. And although all of us share the idea that inclusive education is good for children because they share equal opportunities. They develop typical or normal social relationships within each others. It improves feelings against equality and inclusion, and all values that are very that are promoted in our Western societies, but we have very scarce evidence on how are this inclusive educational system in comparison to special educational system doing it. How effective is to include children in the special educational system, sorry, in the inclusive educational system is not clear. And we follow this question by doing a longitudinal study comparing the outcomes in cognitive and socio-emotional variables of both deaf and blind children, not exactly deaf, more hearing impaired children, both deaf and cochlear implanted children, and blind children, both in the special educational system and in the regular educational system. In Chile, both systems are subsisting because there are a lot of special educational schools in Chile, both for deaf and for blind, but they are being extinguished with the time. And we have about 6 in Santiago and other 5 in regions. But we had many years ago more special educational schools. So we tried then to compare the outcomes of these populations in the two systems. Okay, what says the literature? The literature is very, very scarce in this topic. It seems not to be interesting for researchers all over the world to compare the outcomes of these systems. We found only 2 studies that compare that. One of Blackgorby in 2006, um, devoted especially to children with hearing impairment, and he found that the regular schools do it far better than special educational schools in both cognitive as socio-emotional outcomes. And other study from Lindsay in 2007 showed only marginally positive in favor of inclusive education. So these are the only 2 studies that we could find comparing the systems, and the evidence is of course not concluent because it is based on very few observations. And what we know about cognitive and social-emotional development of deaf and blind children in general, independent of the kind of education that they receive, is, as you can see, when we describe reading, math, executive functions, and social-emotional well-being, we made the difference between oral hearing impaired children versus sign language hearing impaired children, because these 2 subpopulations are very, very different. The oral deaf children, compared with typical developmental children, are descended in all the variables, in reading, in math, in executive functions, and in social-emotional well-being. The sign language deaf children, on the contrary, because they are usually attending special schools where all the other children and teachers are native speakers of sign language. As you can see, they are descended in reading and math, but are as well as typical children in executive functions and socio-emotional well-being. And with respect to the blind children, they are descended in reading and math. Executive functions are like typical children, and socio-emotional well-being are also a little bit descended. These, as said, are independent on the type of school they attend. These are in general terms, okay? Sorry. Okay. We, our design, our sample, sorry, we took 23 deaf children, 17 boys, 6 girls, in average 7 years and 5 months approximately. They attended 15 of these 23 attended special schools and 8 regular schools. And we have also 29 blind children, 15 boys, 14 girls with almost 7 years old. 19 attending special schools and 10 attending regular schools. We tested them at the beginning of the reading process, 6 months after that, and 1 year after that. We tested them we assessed them in cognitive skills, reading precursors, and early mathematical skills, and also in emotional and behavioral problems with the brief. Our instruments are the cognitive skills are the analogies of the WISC-5, digit retention, WISC-5, executive functions with our cat-dog task, which is identical to the Hearts and Flowers task from Adele Diamond. In reading precursors, we tested phonological awareness, only, of course, for blind children, and the vocabulary breadth in an adaptation of a verbal test, gold standard in Spanish speaking countries, an adaptation only for the deaf children, and the early math skills, Marco D assessment battery. This is a German test, and the emotional and behavioral problems with the child behavior checklist. I will show you the results. These are the results of hearing impaired children and deaf children. I'm showing you only the graphs, as you will see later. These are not significant differences, but I wanted you to show you, because it is very clear that all the tendencies are that the special educational system has a low advantage between in compared with the regular or inclusive education. As you can see, vocabulary, the special educational system is this is the regular one. Math, executive functions, I will come here to verbal analogies. Digit retention is almost the same, and the socio-emotional indicators, the externalizing problems are descending with time. The internalizing problems are only descending with time, with the small, with the important difference in favor of the regular education, and the total problems also in favor of the regular education. As you can see, the cognitive variables all tends to be better in the special educational system, but the socio-emotional tend to be better in the regular educational system. We have to say the only significant difference is in verbal analogies here, okay, in favor also in this case of the regular system. And blind children shows almost the opposite tendency. We will show here, this is phonological awareness, math, executive functions, verbal analysis, digital retention. In all of the cognitive variables, the regular education seems to be a little bit better than the special education. Also, and this is also the case for the socio-emotional development. As you can see, all of this show also a better result than the special educational system. But we have to say that the only significant differences of all of these variables is maths for the blind children, okay? I wanted also to show you the tendency because what we can conclude is that you can see a kind of interaction effect in the academic results tending to be better, the results for the deaf children in the segregated education, and tending to be better for the blind children in the inclusive education. However, as said, we only can show significant differences for deaf children in analogies in favor of the inclusive school and for blind children in math in favor of the special school. The case of analogies is very interesting because we couldn't differentiate in our hearing impaired children those who were oralized versus those who used sign language, because the majority of them in regular schools are oralized, are implanted, and so they had really a comprehension of verbal analogies. As we could also show, children, deaf children that use sign language does not understand verbal analogies because the analogy by itself is posed in a manner that for deaf children is not comprehensible. We will discuss that in another presentation later. Okay, and this was we can open the discussion right now. Dina?
Yes, thank you very much. It was really interesting. And do we have any question? You can, if you have any question, you have like a button below the screen where you can click and raise your hand, but also you can try to unmute yourself and participate with your questions. Yes, Erica?
Hi.
Erica.
I don't know if you can see me. Okay, I think now you can. Thank you for the presentation.
Yes, I can see you, Erica.
That was really interesting. I have a couple of questions, if that's okay with you. The first one would be, how is it? So you mentioned that there are two different kinds of schools, special school and inclusive school. Is just a choice of the family whether the child goes in one school or another? How does it work in Chile? And once the children start, I don't know, going into the special school, do they keep going to the special school for the whole academic until the end of their school life, or can they change? How does it work in Chile?
Oh yeah, thank you, Erica, for this question. Yes, you know, the Chilean system is very curious because we have a kind of a voucher system, and any school, any public or voucher school has to define an inclusion program if they want to have children with special needs. If you as family don't find a school um, uh, in your county that offers this, you have no access to inclusive education, and so you have to find a special school that accepts the children, and all special schools will accept the children if they have a special need. But public schools are not obligated to have this system, and so this is a very big problem, because some schools have, for instance, a special educational program for intellectual disability, but not for deaf children or not for blind children. You know, they have to define it before they offer that. You know, and this will change. We hope in the next years, but in the moment, this is the reality. And when a child enters into a special school, they usually attend them and all the basic education. And the basic education lasts 6 to 8 years, okay? Uh, Usually 8 years. And after that, they have to be included in a regular school, because there are not special education for the secondary school. Made a very few exceptions from one deaf school that exists in Santiago. Okay, but I will tell you also a curious thing of our special educational system. Our special educational system is obligated to have the same curriculum as the mainstream education. That is, and this has as a consequence some ridiculous things. For instance, a deaf-blind school that exists in Santiago is obligated to have English as a second language in the curriculum. You know, deaf-blind. You know, this is totally crazy. You know, because the 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 politic, the educational policy, really has not a good understanding of what it means to have special education. And so, and the special educators who are very good in Chile had never the sufficient power to change this educational policy. And so we are trying to do that, of course, but it's very, very hard to change the minds of the Ministry of Education, who is under the idea that there is one educational policy for all, and this is good so.
Thank you. If no one else has other question, I will keep asking you question, because I think it was very interesting, your project. So I will ask one more, and then someone else will jump in. It was interesting to see your results, and so the fact that different disabilities seem to have more, so it was the deaf children that you could see more improvement on the cognitive outcomes. Is that correct? For the
Yeah.
for the one of the two schools. And did you expect this when you started the study? I know you mentioned there were very few studies out there. So did you expect to see this interaction, and how did you explain this to yourself? How did you explain this result?
I would say yes. We expect that for all in respect to the deaf children, because in our in our observation of deaf children attending special schools, we always observed that they were really typical children with another language, you know, and with another culture. And when we observed the same deaf children in regular schools, we observed that they were really not integrated. not as much as blind children. Blind children are doing very well in the regular school because they are accepted. They have a lot of sense of humor. You know, they participate a lot in the verbal dimension of the community, and deaf children cannot do that. Even not oralized children, because they are always language impaired, you know, and we know language is the main issue when we are talking about inclusion. You can see that also with immigrant children that do not have the main language in the school, and they are really very hard to integrate because of this lack of communication. And so we expected that in behalf of, in terms of the deaf children. What we do not expect is that the blind children do it so well in the regular schools, you know. And also we noted that the blind children are really benefit from the regular schools. And so I think in our observation, really the special school seems not to be a good solution for blind children, because uh, inclusive education for the blind is really a very good option and a better option than regular school seems to be. Mm. But this is not the case for deaf children, and we think that our results shows a way to make more studies in this way, because uh, children that are using sign language probably do better in a special school where are other children, people, and teachers that also share this kind of communication. Mm.
That's great. And as you were saying, your study is giving that piece of evidence that you were already seeing in your observation, but now you have this piece of evidence that you can use to move on. That's really good to know. And I was thinking, do you think you will keep looking at this and following up these children, because you've done this study for 1 year? Are you thinking to going more, and I don't know, in 1 year go back to the school and see how it is going? Is it a plan?
Yes, we were in this plan, and then pandemics came to us, and so and this was 3 years ago. So we could try, but this seems be very difficult, because um, mm, we don't know if they are still there, these children, you know. And go back to the schools is not easy. No, I think it will be very difficult. We can, of course, begin a new study uh, for this, but following these children will be very difficult.
Thanks.
Romana, I think Romana is asking a question.
Yes, please, Romano.
Oh, yes, hello, do you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you, Romana.
Thank you for your presentation on this interesting subject. You said that the choice of school is kind of by accident or by chance, if there is a special school or if the inclusive school takes them. And in the results, we already see a difference when you start measuring. So I was wondering whether you checked whether some children get to a special school or to an inclusive school, not by accident, not by chance, but if there is some kind of so like all the students with higher cognitive capacities who are blind maybe go to inclusive schools, and other children, they go to special school. Did you check that? Do you have any hints on that?
Yeah, this is a very good question, Romana. Thank you very much for that. We couldn't check that because, of course, we asked that, but we assume there is a kind of self-selection for all in respect to the blind children, not by the deaf children. You know, with the deaf children, we check that and we can say without any doubt that children that are users from sign language, and the majority of them are children of deaf parents, when they are deaf from deaf parents, they are without any doubt go to the special school, because parents usually have a high valoration of the deaf culture, you know, and so they will never send their children to regular schools. Okay, uh, the the real problem is from those children that are oralized or that are implanted, and their parents usually uh, want that their children go to the regular school, because they don't want that their children belong to the deaf culture. Okay, and so they make really big efforts to normalize them. Okay, so to bring them in the regular school. With the blind children, we don't have this idea. We think there is a kind of self-selection, because probably the most descended in cognitive terms, descended children, they remain in the special school, yeah, and the most typical, they go to the regular school. Of course, parents want always that their children, when they are blind, are the more typical than possible, and this is the reason why, if they are obtaining the academic results that permit them go to the regular schools, they go to the regular school. But we don't have the we never ask that, Romana. I don't know. Okay, we never ask that for the parents. So it's what I am saying you is an assumptions of of us, and but an assumption with empirical evidence, because you really don't find a child of deaf parents that is attending a regular school. You can't find that. They always attend a special school.
Okay, yes, that's interesting. So as you showed, I mean, the difference is, as far as I know, also that children who grow up with sign language at home, they have a more normal language development. So this might also explain some of the importance of the special schools, because it's kind of in their cultural system, and they use these schools and they transfer the knowledge through sign language, and it's much more difficult when they're in the regular schools. So yeah.
Yes, definitely. And you know, this is very interesting, because um, deaf children that use sign language are in almost all terms equal to typical children. And in the dimensions that they are descended are dimensions that are really not well assessed by the typical instruments. And I give you two examples of that. We made the big mistake to select the analogies, the similarities task for assessing them. And we discovered after our second assessment time, that similarities is probably the worst scale to be adapted for deaf children, because the mere idea of a verbal similarity is totally absent of the sign language culture. You know, you can't resemble the verbal analogy with sign language, because sign language usually gives, by giving the sign, give the answer of what you are asking for, you know. And so but we weren't experts. So we did this. We committed this error, and also mathematics. We assessed mathematics with this beautiful Marco D task, but mathematics, the initial arithmetic concepts are all based in mathematical language. You know, greater than, smaller than, all these concepts are really concepts that are verbal. And so when you assess a child in these terms, it's really very, very difficult to assess them fairly. And so we have to find the way to assess these children in a way that are not discriminating because of their main communication system. And this is what we have to find out. Hmm?
Well, thank you very much, Ricardo. I think we have another question in the chat from Marta Ortiz. She says, first of all, thank you very much for the presentation. And she asked, why do you think that special schools offer benefits to deaf students that are not observed to in blind students?
Sorry, Nadia, can you please repeat the question? I lose the last part.
Yeah, Marta asked, why do you think that special schools offer benefits to deaf students that are not observed in blind students?
Ah. Thank you, Marta. No, I think special schools offer the the deaf student uh, an appropriate cultural context for them, and they are in a context where they understand everything what is being said, and they can share all the interactions with other children and teachers. Um, a deaf student that is in regular education cannot do this. And on the contrary, special education is probably also good for blind children that are sharing there, because they are also all blind and they have a lot of things in common. But this is not an advantage necessarily comparing them with blind students that are integrated in regular schools, because children that are integrated in regular schools, blind children that are integrated in regular schools, uh, benefit from the interactions with typical children, and this, of course, improves their cognitive and socio-emotional outcomes, because it's a more demanding environment, but not so demanding that they are unavailable to understand what is going on, and what is exactly what happens with deaf children integrated in regular schools. And so blind children benefit from the regular schools because they are being more demanded, but being integrated, and they, on the contrary, in the special school, are probably interacting in a more demanding way. This is what I think why we observe this difference. But probably, Marta, and this is what we don't know regarding the question from Erika before, we are not sure if there is a kind of auto-selection or self-selection problem here. Know that we have to look further to that.
Do we have any more questions? Yeah, Moritz?
Moritz?
There. Thank you, Ricardo, for your really interesting talk. And really, it's nice to see someone using the Marco D outside Germany, because I'm from Germany and I know that test very well. We use it with blind children too, so I think we can have a lot of discussions there. But I have another question. I'm now doing a lot of work with children that have both difficulties in emotional and behavior field and in a learning field. And what we see is that emotional behavior problems is a good moderator for academic outcomes and the effectiveness of interventions. And there are both measures in your studies. Wondering if you find also some kind of moderation of the effectiveness of the schools, for example, by the EBT, because I saw that in conditions on both schools, children had high, at least in the regular schools, high measures of emotional behavior problems. Maybe I got that wrong from the slides, but you can comment on that.
Thank you very much, Moritz. This is a very good question. No, we haven't done this yet, but this is one pending analysis that we have to do. And think I really appreciate your observation, because you are probably right. Our results could change, including the socio-emotional outcomes as a moderator. So thank you very much. We will do that, Moritz.
Yeah, thank you very much. And you could, just one thought I had as you said that, I'm always thinking of emotional behavior problems as a moderator for learning, but you could also think same way around, vice versa, that learning could be a moderator for emotional and behavior problems. So we should only talk about an interaction, not a moderation of the one thing of the other, because the causal relation is quite hard to say here, maybe. Just another thought. Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you, Moritz. You are right. I think this is especially true with deaf children, oralized children that are attending regular schools, because I think, but this is only an observation. I have no data for that, but we observe that children that learn to speak also learn faster. For instance, mathematics and language, that children that don't learn. So learning is probably, you're right, learning is probably a moderator for more learning, and for better learning. So, but we have no data about that, and we have to take a closer look to that. So thank you very much also for the observation. And Moritz, we love Marco D.
Sorry, I didn't got that.
We love Marco D.
Okay, that's nice. Thank you.
Any more questions? Okay, so I think that's all, Ricardo. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much for attending this. No, thank you very much for attending this. It was very interesting, and have a nice day.
Have a nice day, you too. Thanks for your excellent presentation. It was really interesting. And thank everyone for attending, and see you next year. This is the last Broadback seminar for this academic year, and we hope we can start on October in 2022. Bye.